So nice to see you.
Yeah, you as well. So
So
excited to be here and talk about this.
I know, me too. Me too. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're just gonna get into it. Today we're gonna talk about some sensitive subjects that I was a little hesitant on at first because, as you know, retelling stories and rehashing, just because it's pretty evident that you and I have both made peace with our story. We have forgiven, we have accepted every aspect of this story. So I'm just gonna go into it. Today we're talking about inner child healing, the symbolism, our story, what we went through. Um, so a little bit about my childhood. When I was a kid, I was very physically, emotionally, and verbally abused by my stepfather. Um, I tried to tell child services, and uh, I guess my parents went against me and said I was crazy and that I need to be put in a mental institution and put on a bunch of pills, and that just really messed up my brain chemistry. My father was just drank a lot. My mother did everything she could to make ends meet. Um, I was sent to DH, detention home, as a kid. I was sneaking out of my house. I felt like the more discipline there was, the more I wanted to rebel.
Yeah.
I, yeah, I was sent to rehab for smoking weed. Um, and then, I was in a really serious car accident when I was 19. The trauma pretty much opened me up to become a healer. And so, I broke 2 ribs, my back, upper vertebrae, lacerated a bunch of organs, was pretty hurt, pretty bad. I later on got in another car accident, hit a deer. The impact was very, it was just a lot. It stressed out my adrenal glands. I ended up, developing an iron deficiency along with, vaccine traumas. I had like some serious reaction. They gave me Gardasil to suppress the reaction. Um, and as you know, like when you go through trauma, your brain gut connection disconnects as a coping mechanism. And so, that could really hinder the child development. I felt that I was just being a kid learning, but as a life path 8 and a karma number 7, there's a lot of challenges there. And I later found out that I soul contracted all this stuff for my own growth, for my own soul's evolution, because I just feel like if you don't go through anything in your life, where's the growth? And so, when my dad died, I completely lost myself, my whole being. I just, you know, I later came to realize what was important to me. I came to realize how important it was to take care of my body. I really wanted to, heal my autoimmune disorder. I started taking my spirituality more seriously, became a Reiki master. I got into something called integrated energy therapy, which is really lovely. It's working with the 9 angels of the energy field, blasting trauma from cellular memory, healing
I
this.
would love to hear about what you did to heal yourself, but I first want to really acknowledge your teenage self and
Yeah.
having had all of those experiences. Some of us can be really ashamed of all of the ways in which we coped. And, what I hear from your story is that your parents, they didn't want to blame themselves. They made you wrong and made you, and then what that does to a child to think I'm wrong, I'm bad. And then we choose these coping mechanisms, which we can also beat ourselves up over for choosing, because we are seen as bad for making these choices. And I love your story, and you're just flying through it.
Yeah,
And I want to really.
yeah, there's a lot there. I try not to like focus on one area just because there was so much hurt and so much pain there. I was able to release it and go through it. Um, that's why I was so grateful that I found a natural doctor, because I knew that that was one thing that was really going to help me go through all the unloved parts of me. I did this thing called a brain protocol. Basically, it's rewiring my neurological connection with my gut. And so it was just really amazing. This natural doctor became my boss. I ended up babysitting her children, and her daughter, symbolism, she just looked just like me when I was a little girl. And, they would say stuff to me that would trigger things in my subconscious. And I would just like go in the bathroom and just release real quick and then, come back. And so, there was that, the probiotics, the enzymes, the just going back and releasing all the grief and the pain, and accepting what happened to me. I was doing like mistletoe injections and things like that, and all I really wanted to do was to better myself. And I really, there was a lot of resentment there was a lot of anger, because I wasn't being heard as a kid, and I was very upset about that. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm this like child screaming and crying and wanting to be heard, wanting to be seen, wanting to be loved. And
Yes.
so yeah, I was really glad that I got the opportunity to face all the wounds. I got the opportunity to, manifest my dream to come to California. And I feel like because of all the work that I did with my inner child healing, I was able to make space and room for all the things that made sense to me in my life. And so, um, I was just really happy that I was able to forgive. And I guess I'm more or less really happy that I'm integrating that program of rejection, because for the longest time I'm like, oh, what will they think about me, what will they say, and that's like, that's hindered myself. And I realized that it came back to not being loved and accepted as a kid.
Yeah.
And so now that I've integrated that part of me, I'm just like, I want to tell the world about my story. I want to tell the world that they can too do the work that you and I are doing. And
Yeah.
so I would love to hear your story and your journey. It's okay if it's a little longer than mine. I just
Oh,
love
don't worry about that. No.
having you here.
Well, I see I see so much of my story and your story, and I don't think our stories are all that unique. But what I do think is that we haven't been talking about it very much in our society, right? Like, a lot of people now are becoming aware that they did have issues beginning in childhood, and but there's nowhere to go right now to do that. You found your way through your babysitter's parents, and I think a lot, I found my way through my way, and we all find our way if that's our decision or choice to do so. And so I think everybody's healing is going to be very unique for them, and everybody is going to get exactly what they need. You exactly needed the person that showed up in your life, right? Like, when we are asking so strongly, I truly believe our higher selves or source answers that call and provides that for us. And
Yeah.
so yeah, there's still the fear of being seen and heard, and that as I'm sure you can relate, being seen sometimes meant getting hurt, getting verbally abused, being pushed around or bullied by your very own parents, the very people who are the only examples a child has, or very few examples that a child has of what a loving relationship looks like. And so then we go into adulthood and we pick very similar loving relationships because that's what we're used to. And it causes so much continued pain and trauma. And we have to break the cycle and do the work on ourselves and heal those inner child wounds. But right now, the other day you brought out your notebook where you repeated something 200 something times. And anybody who doesn't know how to do inner child work, just going back to the trauma over and over and over and over and over again doesn't heal the trauma. You're just triggering yourself over and over and over again, right? Uh, and so I wrote a book, Adult Kindergarten Reschooling the Inner Child, and in there I give people the tools to actually go back and revisit those memories and start to replay them. I'm sure you've done this work as well, where we go back to the traumatic memories, we go back to them in the present moment, and we can make those memories however we want. We can fight the bully. We can yell back at our parents. We can run away. We can make love to the person if we really wanted to, because it's all happening in our now moment. And we can change how we feel about that moment. And I think memories are memories so that they're not life sentences. We're not doomed to being traumatized. They're flagged in our minds and in our memories so that we can go back and make that moment right, right? To correct it, to start to see it from a different perspective or different view. Because I'm sure your parents, just as my parents, were doing their absolute best. They didn't know any better. And we all know this, right? Our parents, all of them, were doing their absolute best. Like, they want the best for their kids, but they just don't. Sometimes they have this mentality of pick yourself up by the bootstraps, or tough love is the way to do it. I mean, if that's their only example, what else do they know either? They can only do what it is that they know, just as we can only do what we know. So if we don't know of another way to heal those wounds, then it's scary, it's traumatic to go back and just have those experiences over and over again. So no wonder people, either avoid or don't want to do the work, because what's the sense in re-triggering yourself or exposing yourself to the hurt and pain over and over and over again if you don't have the tools to release that trauma? What I love about what you were saying is that you went to the bathroom to go cry when this stuff was happening, right? What you did is you went to a safe space to release the trauma from your body.
Mhm.
And so you did the very thing that is the most helpful and beneficial for you. um, I would I found myself, I actually escape and go to the bathroom to go to the bathroom. And the other day, not too long ago, I realized, holy shit, this was my coping mechanism for getting out of a situation that felt scary or harmful to me, or when I was being made fun of or just needed an escape. I would go pee, right? And it was also a release, right? While yours was tears, mine is still a release from the body. I've actually tapped in, and that's how sometimes I release. Um, so so I didn't get to mention just yet that I had a narcissistic mother, and being the oldest of two, for some reason, my mom decided that my younger sister was her favorite, and I was basically there's actually a term for this in the narcissistic world. I was made the scapegoat child, and my sister was made the golden child. And so she literally could do no wrong, and I was the one that apparently I did everything wrong. And it was it was a challenge, to say the least. I want to say that mother wounds are one of the harder ones. Not that father wounds aren't, or even stepfather, right? He's still that masculine wound, but mothers are where you go for safety and nurturing and care. And um, I feel like this is something in society that we don't talk about as well. These mother wounds, father wounds have been a little bit more common or easier to accept, but these mother wounds, these run really, really deep, and I'm ready to start talking about this. And I think society should be, it sounds like they're starting to come around to talking about this as well. And if I happen to be somebody who can support this growth, wonderful. If somebody else is better equipped to handle it, please, you are welcome to take on that thing. But I'm ready. And I think, we're ready to start working on these child wounds. So with that being said, I'd love to hear more about how you started to heal those wounds. the growth process.
Well, I realized that I was like putting all these fucking conditions, pardon my language, but I was putting all these conditions on the reason why I wouldn't go do something. Like I was like stuck in this victim mentality. And then when I started forgiving, because I soul contracted this stuff.
Right.
I forgave and I accepted, and even part of the brain protocol, like I was purging out, I even re-purged out the vaccine reaction. I was purging out suppressed grief, suppressed resentment towards, just not being loved. And I put all of those feelings into my heart. I did all the shadow work around just re-loving what wasn't love. And I think the most crucial part of the inner child healing was the forgiveness and the acceptance aspect. And I realized that if I just learned how to become that little girl again and love myself,
Yeah.
then that set me free. So how about you? I would love to hear about you and how you
Yeah,
heal.
well, I think that is exactly that. In my book, I talk about becoming a 5-year-old self, and I
Mhm.
just use that as a frame of reference because I feel like that was when we were still us. We still just loved the world. We were still cute. We were still innocent. We didn't see things as good or bad, as right or wrong. We were just being our genuine selves. So I use it the 5-year-old self, but um, and and what I suggest people do is really picture their little 5-year-old selves with their big heads and their little bodies, and they're so fucking cute, right? Like, I love 5-year-old kids. That's when they're cute, and beyond that, they they get less cute. But when they're 5, they're still adorable. And so if we can look at ourselves and it's very easy to look at our 5-year-old self with complete love and acceptance and compassion, and we can look at somebody else's little 5-year-old, literal a physical 5-year-old child with nothing but love in our hearts, because we know that they are not trying to do anything to hurt us, to harm us, or anything, right? We know that they're good to the core, that they don't have bad intentions. And so, and as a quick side note, whenever there's somebody in my life that's not being kind or friendly or whatever, I really try to visualize their little 5-year-old self inside them, who just is trying to figure out the world and doesn't quite know how to do it, and is like, hey, you're stepping on my shoes. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. You're so cute. It really keeps me from like, they're just putting up walls and guards and things to protect that little 5-year-old self, right? And we all have that little 5-year-old self inside of us. And so to see our own little 5-year-old self with just so much love and compassion, and then to start to see other people with such love and compassion, that's what makes loving, compassionate people, right? To see their innocence, to see their good, to not assume that they're trying to be mean, that maybe they just have their defense mechanisms like you and I had. I'm sure as a teen, I was a punk ass kid, right? Like, I'm sure we all did what we had to do to get through what we got through. And I strongly believe those of us who did choose that karmic experience to be challenged early on are really here to help humanity, because we know what it's like to be on the other side of that trauma. We know what it's like to be shamed and blamed and hurt. And many of us would never do that again to somebody else, because we know exactly how that feels. So that's why I'm so excited to start working on this, because I know the beautiful souls that have chosen to have this experience are just waiting to come out and be the healers and the helpers and the lovers and the guides that we need in this world right now. And right now, I think, some of them, or many of them, without knowing how to get to their inner child, they have those guards up, they have those walls up, they have their protection up. And when you're guarded, it's very challenging to lend a helping hand, to be loving, to support another person when you still are in so much pain,
And
I mean, I
receive.
know that.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
receive when you have a guarded heart. There's
Yeah,
no that's really challenging.
precisely.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really had to that was a hard pill to swallow, was like, oh, I chose this? Like, oh shit. I don't have to like hide anymore? Oh shit. That's so
Yeah.
liberating.
Oh, right. I mean, and it's so funny because a past version of myself didn't even know how guarded and how, like they don't know. I mean, I'm sure you didn't either. You don't even know how guarded you are, and until you start to break down those walls. And so that's why like compassion is so important, of course, to ourselves, but to another person who, like, they just don't even know how they're being. They don't know another
Yeah.
way. And so, yeah, to be a light, to have had that experience, to show others that there is a way to heal yourself mentally,
Mhm.
spiritually, physically. Um, I was 230 pounds in high school. My senior pictures are rather not embarrassing, but kind of. But I had to choose food in that time and space. As I got into a teenager, my mom was even harsher to me. Um, Physical violence began because she was starting to really lose her sense of control over me. And so she decided to get even more angry and more vicious and try to get that control back. Um, so that's, like I said, that's your primary love relationship, and that was really hard. I might post pictures of my high school self, just to show that. But I feel for me, you had to release some chemicals, and I had to release physical weight, and that was with you know releasing the weight is literally symbolic, right? We know spiritually there's so many symbols to our experiences, and that symbolically the extra weight was the extra weight of guilt and shame and
Mhm.
hurt and all that stuff. And sometimes it's not even about exercise or what you eat. As we people who are overweight can know, sometimes it doesn't matter how much you diet and exercise. The physical weight is not necessarily because of the food that you eat. It is because of the burden that you still continue to carry with you, that you've been unable to release or let go from your body, and it stays there. And I was guided that, for a while there, I was upset at, like, how come I had to go through all of this weight issue? And I was guided that there's going to be so many other people who have that same issue, and there's not a lot of people. My mentors were not obese, they were not overweight, they didn't have that struggle. So for me to be somebody who did have that struggle and can show people there is a way that you can do this, um, I was guided that that's what part of what I'm here to do as well, is to release the physical weight from people's bodies. But we all store it in whatever way was most beneficial for us to overcome, you know.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. I think part of the autoimmune disorder, it was triggered from numerous amounts of things. I mean, environmental toxins, trauma, emotional eating. I really struggled with emotional eating.
Yeah.
I mean, pizza, everything, carbs, gluten, ice cream. I even remember, like, before I found my natural doctor, how depressed I was, how much I was eating, McDonald's ice cream, and I was just like shoveling it in, like, oh, like just so. But
Yeah, but
then,
it
when
feels
I
so
started,
good in that moment. Just a
I
quick side note,
know,
right? That feels so much better. And we're just looking to feel better, even if
yeah,
it's that
yeah,
temporary
mhm,
fix. God, we all love ice cream. I still
yeah,
love ice cream. Our inner
yeah,
child loves ice cream. Like,
yeah.
it's
It
good for the
was.
soul. Go
Yeah, it
ahead.
is good for the soul. But I came to realize that if I was investing all this money in my health, if I was investing all this money in natural medicine and all of the things that I would basically be hindering my growth further, I would be slowing my healing process. And so I managed to, giving up grains was probably the hardest thing I ever gave up. Smoking cigarettes was okay. It wasn't that hard to give up, but grains, I mean, coming from a recovering emotional eater, I had to give it up. I had to give up gluten, everything that I loved. I miss pizza. I miss eating gluten-free pizza. I mean, but it's so much more satisfying now that I'm not bloated. I'm healthier. I'm more vibrant. I feel better. I'm sleeping better. I'm able to handle and cope my emotions and stress in a more emotionally intelligent manner, and that's been a lot of work to come to that place. I mean, you as well. I mean, I know that you have went through your own healing journey, and that's just so amazing, your whole transformation. I'm so moved by it. So
Yeah, well, now that we're talking, um, a lot of what I did was I was part of a counseling community, and I tell the story. That's because something was definitely wrong with me, so I had to figure out what was wrong with me, and I studied psychology and joined a counseling community. And so the skills that I teach in my book are like the healing the emotional wounds, but what you're and with that came the physical healing, but they do go hand in hand, right? Like when we're not turning to these coping mechanisms, food, drugs, cigarettes, and I turn to all of them as well, um, those coping mechanisms were helping us to cope with it. They were just sugarcoating it. My drug of choice was sugar, that's for sure. And
I was gonna pause again. I think my internet's
should we
disappearing.
take a break, or what do you think?
I think it's okay. I think it's gonna continue, but if we pause again, just like it'll come back on. So sorry about that. But what were you saying about please pardon, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. um I don't remember where I was going with
You
that.
studied psychology and you got
Yes.
a really amazing group going, and you learned how to heal the wounds and
Yeah, well, they do go hand in hand, I guess is what I was getting at, is that like we can do emotional healing, and then it gives us the space to start doing the coping, fixing our coping mechanisms,
Mhm.
and our physical bodies. And one of the things that I really try to stress in this book is not to stress. The way to heal these wounds is with love. I know, like, being angry and fighting and being upset, and I was upset, like, God, why am I so fat? Like, this sucks. Like, like, getting upset isn't what's going to heal the issue. Getting upset at others isn't going to heal the issue. It's actually like receiving and getting calm and just being with yourself and loving yourself. And this sounds so cliche to so many people who don't quite understand it yet. That for me to just receive, like, I used to look at people who sat on the beach or sat at a park. I'm literally like, don't you have something better to do than just sit there? And now that's my ass. My ass is at the park, on my yoga mat, or at the beach, just receiving the warmth of the sun, receiving Mother Earth holding me underneath, receiving the cool breeze, receiving the love of a tree that's shading me, grandmother ocean who's come to meet me, to just be one with wherever you are in nature. But the key is to just be and not do. And I think that's what's really fun about this virus thing that's happening right now, is that
Mhm.
people are forced to just be with themselves, or be with their creative expressions, be with their thoughts. Like, I love this time and space right now. I really do. I go through my Facebook wall and I see what people are doing for fun and whatever. And luckily I have a wonderful support group of people, because they only attract wonderful, kind, loving people into my life anymore. And the just by communicating with them any longer, or simply like, if this is how you're going to behave, if you're not going to behave lovingly, I don't choose to spend my time with not loving people. And this is something I share in the book because I feel like it's not a very popular opinion, that we think spiritually we're supposed to love and accept everybody as they are. And if somebody's being unkind to you, if they're being rude, if they're being disrespectful, if they just, you know, see the world from this harsh point of view, those are who you are surrounding yourself with energetically. And I have a very unpopular opinion of, I think we need to release those people from our experience. And when they have enough people releasing themselves from being their friends, they might actually start to say, wait, I see a pattern here. The pattern is me.
Mhm.
And so they can start to do the work. And when they start to see themselves or see others with more love and compassion, more love and compassionate people can fill that space and come into that experience. And as soon as we release those people, that gives us space to receive more love and kindness from people around us. Okay, but back to my Facebook wall, which is just filled with such fun, wonderful, beautiful. And I just, I think how we choose to view our lives is super important. Like how we choose to view this virus. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? We always have a choice in the matter. And everything it's about perspective, right? Our inner child had a perspective of the world that sometimes just isn't true anymore. Now that we're grown, we're adults, we're wiser, we can see that perspective from that child's point of view and say, look, honey, your parents' divorce had nothing to do with you, even though we might have taken that on, right? We now know that had to do with mommy and daddy. That had nothing to do with you. So we can release the trauma that we put onto ourselves. I did something wrong and mommy and daddy are getting a divorce, or they don't love me, which we now know from our older, wiser perspective that that's not true, right? And so everything is about perspective, and whatever perspective is true for us, as long as we continue to have that perspective, um it is the micro into the macro, right? Like how we view ourselves, how we view our world is what is a reflection in the outer world, what we choose to see. um so yeah, right now, what a fun time. And the question I had last night is, why is it any better to be pessimistic than it is to be optimistic, right? Like,
I really don't know because I mean, I don't mean to like talk shit about my grandma, but like, and me and like my sister and my mom totally like, we don't know if it's like a lineage thing or if it's just like she's just miserable. She's so
right,
sad. There's always something wrong. And
right,
when we call her, we're like, "Oh, okay, we love you. Like, sorry, I don't really want to hear you complaining because like
right,
I don't have anything to complain about. Like, yeah, I don't have a job right now. Like, I was laid off and that, this and that, but there's just we're surrounded by so much beauty. I have never been so present. I don't have to figure anything out. I don't have to, do this, do that. I mean, yeah, I did process some fear, but I quickly let it out of my body because I know that I don't need to stay in that.
right,
I don't need to participate in the lower frequency energies because I know that in the grand scheme of things, I have everything I need. And I'm feeling for all the people that are suffering right now. That I'm so sorry, and I hope that we can all come together as a community and learn how to support each other. I
yeah,
think that this is what it's all about, is just really, really rejoicing and community, and rebuilding our own infrastructure. You know.
absolutely, right. And we're
Mhm.
all being given the time and space to do the work right now, and so it's really wonderful. uh, uh yeah, I just love sharing on this topic. Thank you so much for taking the time to
Thank you. I'm so honored to
communicate.
have you here. I know, like, when I first moved here, I was just like so excited. I was hoping to have you at one of my healing events, and then when I saw you follow your dream and your heart to Hawaii, I was like, God bless you. I am so happy that you got to follow your heart and your dream, and I love to see you shining, and I'm so grateful. And yeah, once your book gets published, I want a copy. I'm just so
Absolutely.
excited to hear more
Signed,
about your
sealed, and
novel.
delivered.
Pardon?
Signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yes. Well, thank you again for your time. And, like I said, I would love to hear more about the support system that you were talking about developing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all in the book, and I would love to do another meeting because I think it'd be really great to share with you personally beforehand, and then we can go into it because
Yeah.
it is quite great, and it's what I share in the book, and I'm happy to start sharing it with people. And you know, I I want self care, and I don't keep anything secret in the book. Like I basically give everybody the tools in my book to do their own work. If you have one other friend in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, that you can do this work with, that is enough. That is plenty. And that's what I share in the book. And then of course, my goal is to have workshops around the world would be amazing. But around the United States, to where people are connected to other adult kindergartners who have the same set of tools, so that you basically get unlimited mental health care for as long as somebody else is available and has the space to hold space for you. And that is ultimately what I hope to provide people, is all these amazing tools to either work with one trusted friend or be connected through a community of other people who speak the language of love and compassion and healing for one another. So yeah, I'm so excited to share those tools with you, with everybody. Yes.
I'm excited to be a part of it and to watch us grow together. So,
Thank you, sister.
and with me, if you need not you, I know you're doing so beautiful and shining, but if there's anyone out there listening that's having a problem with their health or their healing, please contact me, like, for a free consultation. I'm a certified health coach, and I went to school at the integrative nutrition, and it was just so powerful to learn different types of dynamics with different dietary theories. But like I said, thanks again for your time today, and I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You as well.
Namaste.
Mwah.